the destination, the finish line, whatever it is, you've got to realize it is but a moment in time.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a moment in time. And that's why I said the journey is such the critical piece, because if you're miserable all along the journey, there is nothing about that moment. I don't care how you define that moment that's going to make it worth it.
Yeah.
If so much of the rest of the journey is miserable,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be its own satisfaction along the way.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. What if the finish line that you're crossing or that you're chasing isn't actually yours? That's a question that recently stopped both Gwen and I in our tracks when our friends over at the Listening for Questions podcast started exploring what it really means to finish and the important questions to ask about finish lines. It's a simple question, and yet it unravels so much about how we set goals, how we measure success as business owners, and ultimately how we decide what is and is not worth our effort. Tonya here with Gwen, the amazing Gwen Bortner. And today, what we are talking about is really what happens when we inherit the finish lines we're chasing. Whether we inherit them from mentors, from the industry we're in, or even from our younger selves. And how to know when it's time to redraw the finish line or put it in an entirely different place. Because in leadership, crossing the wrong finish line is just as pricey as never crossing one at all. And if the conversation hits home, you are going to want to get on our weekly list at everydayeffectiveness.com/question. Every week, Gwen sends out one really good question. She doesn't give you advice. She doesn't dump a bunch of insight on you. Just the kind of question that gets you into your CEO brain and helps you see your business differently. So let's talk about finish lines, who draws them, why we chase them, and what it looks like to finally claim ones that we actually feel ownership over. So Gwen, I want you to kick us off because you were the first person who actually wrapped words around this idea of chasing goals or running after finish lines that aren't actually yours. So I want you to kind of share with us how you have seen this manifest in business, particularly in businesses founded by women.
There's so many examples I don't even know where to choose from. But I'll say I blame it, and that's a way oversimplification, on social media and the comparison trap, which we have a whole episode on the comparison trap.
Mm-hmm.
That is the problem, is we see other people's goals and they appear to be successful and they appear to be happy, and we project a whole lot of things on what we're seeing on social media, our conversations in networking groups, the list can go on and on and on. And so we decide that we will have whatever things that we believe they have if we do the same thing that they're doing. Right? Whether it's a marketing tactic, whether it's a financial goal, whether it's a number of hours worked goal. I mean, it's not any particular topic. It can cover all sorts of pieces. But the challenge first is what I'm always saying. Yes, context matters. And most of the time we don't have enough context. And part of it is what they're considering success, what you would consider success. And how do we actually define success? And so we get caught seeing, I'll say, consistent examples of success. So It used to be, it's got to be a 6-figure business. And then it became, no, you have to have a 7-figure business. And we haven't quite got to, if you don't have an 8-figure business, you're not successful. But I'm sure we're going to get there pretty soon. And so, because we watched that. What makes that number actually successful or not successful? Well, there's so many other things where a 6-figure business could be super, super successful. And we've shared examples of this before, more so than a 7-figure business, depending on how you're defining success. And so the problem is we let other people create this, I'll say, imaginary definition of success. It's just kind of a generic definition of success that may or may not actually apply to us personally. And so we go chasing after that, whatever that is. That becomes the goal. That becomes the finish line. That becomes the thing. And if it doesn't actually align with our real definition of success, when we get there, it is so empty.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm so glad you brought up the 7-figure, 8-figure business example, right? Because I feel like I'm going to put big air quotes, the 7-figure business, the $1 million business has almost become an idol in and of itself in business, particularly in online business, right? Where, there's this myth that online business has no overhead, right? Like people like to think it's no fulfillment cost. And so everything you do goes straight to your pocket. And so you start talking about the 7-figure business and people genuinely think 7 figures into their household bank account, all that's going to do for them, not realizing all the other stuff that comes with the 7-figure business that they may have actually started their business to get away from. Right? Having a team. Not all 7-figure businesses have to have a team, right? That's not true that all models go that way. But a lot of times they do, or they come with a level of fulfillment people don't really want and all of that other stuff. But you start saying it so often, right? You start hearing it so often that you feel like you're a phony or you're too much of a newbie if you don't say it. And then you start saying it so often that it doesn't even have true meaning for you.
Right.
Because I don't know about you, Gwen, but nobody has ever asked me when I've shouted like a big goal like that, like, oh, I'm going to have a 7-figure agency, or, oh, I'm working toward, my first 6 figures when I was there. Not one person ever questions me. They go, oh, me too.
Right. There's never like, is that actually a good idea? Is that a good idea with this particular business model? Have you thought about the things that that's going to entail? Blah, 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 blah.
Or even, oh, how I'm so happy for you. On the other hand, I am super happy at like low 6 figures. Like, I thought about that 7-figure thing. That's not for me. That's for the birds. Nobody wants to say that. Like, I don't think you'd get kicked out of a room, but I think we fear that we would, right? Like, we're not playing big enough.
I was going to say that we're not ambitious enough. I think that's the thing, is like, if we aren't constantly going after this thing, we aren't ambitious enough. We aren't driven enough. There's all sorts of things about that, which could be true, but probably isn't.
Right. And,
maybe true for right now. Maybe I'm not ambitious right now because I've got a whole lot of other things that is taking my ambition energy and or that I may be ambitious about. But we always assume that if we aren't doing that, we aren't the things an entrepreneur is supposed to be.
Right. Right. And that is, I think, a lot of, there's just a lot of imposter syndrome that comes with entrepreneurship. Sure. And I think these goals, right, or what we're racing toward, a lot of times activates that imposter syndrome. And, what I love about this question is that we're not the only one asking it, actually. The idea of this came from our friends over at Listening for the Questions, which is a brand new podcast. I think they've got maybe 5 episodes so far. And what I love about the show is they just ask questions and they discuss questions, but they don't answer them, right? Because like us, they understand that my answer is not the same as yours. And where the transformation actually happens is when we sit in discomfort and curiosity, asking these questions for ourselves. And so we're going to link that episode in our show notes because it's an amazing listen and I think everybody should listen to it. But also, we're really about asking smart questions. I mean, I think that's something that you have recently really hit on in the last year, I would say, is that most of our clients may be hungry for more information, but they don't need more information. What they really need is to be asking themselves better questions. They need people to ask them harder questions. I know that's a service that you provide for them and they really appreciate that. And I'm curious from you, before we get more into the finish line piece, what have you personally discovered about yourself through the exercise of asking deeper, better questions?
The first, which isn't a surprise, is it's really hard to ask yourself good questions because we self-edit. It's really, really hard. There are some tools and techniques that I use that make it usually better, but I won't say that it's outstanding. The having an outside person ask the question makes, because often they're really doing it with curiosity. Have you considered what would it look like if? Not saying that necessarily that's the right answer, but getting us to consider that other piece. The other piece that I think that I've seen with it is our primary focus at Everyday Effectiveness is accountability. That's really what we're providing. But it's not accountability, did you get the task done? It's accountability that is the way we really define accountability, is reflection, right? So it's not just did you do it, but what did we learn about doing it, including was it the right thing to do?
Right.
Right. And sometimes it's about not only was it the right thing to do, but was it the right time to do it, was the right order to do it. And I was just in conversations where we were talking about if you've got a chain and there are links in the chain, and you can see there's 6 links, all of which have, some issues around them. But there's a link that is practically rusted through, but we're ignoring it. It doesn't matter that we fix these other links.
Right.
Because the chain is still super, super weak where the one is practically rusted through. And so, that's the piece of, are we actually focusing on the right thing? And that asking that question of what really is the right thing, that's a hard question to answer to yourself.
Yeah. And a couple of things that you've said in the past is that, getting back to the topic of finish lines, is that when a leader isn't defining their own finish line, especially in alignment with their values and their life and all of, and even the season of life, a lot of times, especially people you work with, right, they're bound to be successful no matter what, but the level of success just doesn't feel as fulfilling as they expect. Sometimes it doesn't feel sustainable. We also see that some people inherit goals, and that's what I'm going to ask you about that in just a second. And those inherited goals sometimes cause burnout, misalignment. If you have a team, your team gets confused because everybody's running. They're not necessarily all running in the same direction. Definitely not all running together. It's like the meme where, my ducks, they're not even in a row. They're just like scattered, like like ferrets. So how do we inherit finish lines? Because I think, when we think of inheritance, you think, oh, I got this from my parents.
Right. The inherited finish line comes from a lot of places. So like I said, I'll go back to, sometimes it's social media. It's the things that we're being bombarded with, or, the media or TV, or, like all the places that we're getting input from the outside, right? That we're seeing this and it's like, okay, well, that must be the thing that I'm supposed to go after because so many people are going after that. That must be the thing. So one of the inheritances is more of an absorption of a finish line, right? Of a goal, right? There's the ones that come, I think, that truly are inherited, that are related to our family story, to our family relationships, to our close friendship relationships, of this is the way that we measure success, right? One of my clients who, she knows this, but she still struggles with it. Her father was an excellent, excellent salesman. If he believed in it, he would be able to sell ice cubes to Eskimos, at a premium price, right? I mean, just that was his mojo. And so the way you track sales really is money. Did someone buy is a successful sale. Anything else is not necessarily a successful sale. And so although money doesn't drive her at all, she still gets very wound up from time to time about worrying about how much was there. Not was I satisfied, not is it doesn't meet my needs, not does it do any of these other. So that's an inherited story. Like I said, she's self-aware enough to know that. And these days, we've got enough of a relationship. I can just say, yeah, I think that's your dad's voice that you're hearing. And she's like, not that he would put that on her. Right. But was raised with that. Right. It wasn't like, and if you're not making this amount of money, you're not successful. That was not at all the messaging. It's just that inherited environment of this is what success looks like. Right. But I also think there is this inheritance of what made sense for us at a time that isn't necessarily making sense for us anymore. And what I'll call that is the inheritance of obligation. I said I was going to do this. I'm no longer actually interested, desirous. It's no longer appropriate. The list can go on and on and on. But because I said I was going to do it, the whole I won't be a quitter. Right. So I'm still going to go after this thing, even though deep in my soul, maybe not even that deep, I know it's no longer the right thing.
Yeah.
And so we just continue on it. And of course, when we know that, when we get there, there is zero satisfaction for it because we already knew it wasn't going to be satisfying before we even got there. Right. And so I think the inability to claim a finish line that's not a finish line. Right?
Yeah.
I finished the swim of the triathlon and I'm going to call it good. I'm not going to do the bike or the run, but I'm still calling it finished because I realized all I really cared about was getting the swim done, and I got the swim done. And so I'm just going to, I'm not even getting on the bike.
Yeah.
But so many of us like, oh, but I said I was going to do the triathlon, so I'm getting on the bike and I think there's a lot that falls into obligation as well. And it really often is self-obligation because we've said we were going to do this, so we think we have to do this.
Yeah, and we see that in so many segments of life, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, everywhere.
Right, it's like students who don't want to change their major. They have this like little kid dream of majoring in a certain thing to get into a certain field. They take the first like major specific class and they're like, oh my gosh, I do not want to do this. Right. But they feel like, well, how do I admit that? How do I admit that I got this far not knowing what the actual job was?
Right.
And the other piece, I love that you explained how we inherit, finish lines that aren't ours. We've talked a lot about industry norms, in online business, right now we're still at this peak of hustle culture. People are fighting back against it. But, we still see a lot of that. And many of us who are at this level of business, we came up under hustle culture. And even if we hated it, even if we know it's hogwash, we still have absorbed some of that definition of success that we have to fight against. And, it's like the whole thing of implicit bias, right? The reason it's implicit is because you don't know you have it. So there's that piece, of where you're like, well, this is just what people at this level do. Where do you think, though, I guess what I'm wondering is this is just what people at this level do. That is really hard to know when it's false and when it's true.
That's the place where we have to start digging deeper and actually checking our, for lack of a better term, our sources, right? This is where we need to get more context. And my whole thing is, if you can't get the context, then don't assume it's true. Because so many people will say, oh, but so-and-so, enter any, big name, online person here, says such and such. And it's like, yeah, but do you actually know that statement as you're defining it in your head is what's actually happening?
Yeah.
Right? What else is going on behind the scenes that you don't know that may be making that thing happen in the way that you're saying, I should, as an individual, be able to do this? Maybe that's true. But my guess is that, depending on how big the name is, it's like they've got a staff of 10 trying that is fulfilling the thing that they're like, you should, blah, 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 fill in whatever blank. Right. And so if you can actually check and say, who are people that are doing this and really understand and get into the details? But most of us don't have the time or the energy or the relationships, quite honestly, to get to that level of detail, to be able to say, is this really true? But the bigger question you really need to be asking yourself is this actually true for me?
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe the 5 other people, this is what they have to do, but do you have to do it that way? And, that's one of the things I say a lot to my clients and other people is, for almost anything, there are multiple right answers. The trick is to find what is your best right answer for you. And so maybe, this is what we have to do at this level of business. May be true for a lot of people, but the question is, does it have to be true for you? And are you okay with it being true for you?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's as an easy answer as that. Because almost always, when you're absolutely sure that to be at this level of business, you must fill in whatever blank you want to fill in. If you look hard enough, you can find someone who's at that level of business and is not doing
right
that thing. Now, there may be a whole bunch of other things they had to do so that this other is true.
Right.
Right. But I think this is the place that there's always a struggle. I was just talking to one of my friends who has, it's at least an 8-figure. I don't know. It might be a 9-figure business. He's got a very successful business. He just finished taking a year sabbatical as the CEO, as the founder, owner, CEO of this business. There's people that say you can't possibly do that. And I said, so what are you doing now? And he says, I work about 12 hours a week. It was like, awesome. But he had to do a whole bunch of other things to make that possible.
Right.
Where there's a lot of people say you can't have, an 8 or a 9-figure business, as a founder CEO and not be in it.
Right.
Well,
just like there's other people.
You can.
Right. And there's, other people who say, pay me $10,000 and I'll teach you how to, have an 8-figure business on a 10-hour work week from day one.
And I also know that wasn't true for him either.
Yeah, exactly. So if somebody's listening right now and they're like, I don't know if I'm chasing a finish line that's mine or somebody else's. What are some, symptoms, markers that they could kind of look at to recognize whether they're chasing their own finish line or somebody else's?
So the first is, are you excited about it no matter what? And when I say excited, I mean motivated, passionate, whatever the case may be. Are you excited about it on the journey to it? Right? And that's what I mean by no matter what. So no matter where you are in the process, are you excited about it? We're working on piloting accountability training for businesses instead of just using it internally, with our clients. And anytime I start talking about it, everyone's like, you are so lit up about this. We are so early on. We have so much to figure out. We have made zero money on this at this point. Right. So we are so far away from anything that would be called a finish line.
Right. We are so in the cost of fulfillment at its highest right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm so far away, but I still get really lit up about it. Now, maybe at some point that'll change. Maybe something will happen. I don't think it's going to. I think the finish line that I'm trying to go to is a real finish line for me. But interestingly enough, that includes some things that were not on my finish line just a year ago. Like a year ago, I wouldn't have wanted to have the employees that this finish line will require. Right? And so it's changed, but I'm also okay and excited about that possibility. We're not there yet, but when we get there, I'm not worried about it. It's a very different finish line than I had before. But I can feel the excitement about it all along the journey. And if it's like, oh yeah, I have to do that, then this may not be your finish line.
Okay. So it's your finish line if you're feeling excited, no matter where you're at on the journey toward it. Okay, something else, this kind of goes a little bit farther in the journey, I would say, that I've heard you talk about is you get there and you feel accomplished, right? Like, haha, I am here.
I'm going to say this.
Right? But then you're like, really? Like, is this it? Like,
well, and so I was thinking about that as the other half of it, which is also, are you, I don't want to say delaying gratifications, that's not really what I mean, but are you expecting a major change in your feelings, your energy, your, fill in whatever blank by hitting, and like emotional stuff, not like, physical, like I expect to have sold $1 million by the time I hit the sell $1 million, well, those two things go together, but emotionally, right? Are you expecting something to be wildly different upon reaching that finish line than what you feel now? Now, not that it won't be somewhat different, but wildly different than where you are now.
Well, it's like a little kid with their birthday, right? It's like, they're so excited to turn double digits. And then they realize that turning double digits didn't automatically make them a different person.
Right. Everything is still pretty much the same. Maybe you can stay up a half an hour later.
Yeah.
Right. But pretty much everything else is the same. And so that to me is the other sign, right? Is because the destination, the finish line, whatever it is, you've got to realize it is but a moment in time.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a moment in time. And that's why I said the journey is such the critical piece, because if you're miserable all along the journey, there is nothing about that moment. I don't care how you define that moment that's going to make it worth it.
Yeah.
If so much of the rest of the journey is miserable, there has to be its own satisfaction along the way. You may expect a high at that point, but it can't be Mount Everest compared to the ocean shore.
Right.
Right. Because it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's going to be so disappointing.
What else? What other markers are there that it's not your finish line?
I think the last marker is when in your soul, back to, we discount our own intuition so much, so often. But when it's like, when people say my heart's not in it, that's probably really true. Your heart's not in it. Your heart needs to be in it. All of this is hard. None of this is easy. You don't need to add complexity. You don't need to add difficulty to your score,
right?
on it. So you might as well be going after the things that your heart is in. Not that your heart's gonna be in every moment of every second of every part of the journey, because that ain't the way that it really works either. No. But when you're thinking about the goal, those bigger finish lines, is your heart in it, right? And then of course, the last one, which we've talked about multiple times, and it comes from our friend Nick Peterson, is that idea of, is the thing that you really, really want, is that goal actually in line with that now, right? And we've used this before, but I see it happen a lot in the world of women, particularly entrepreneurial women or, professional women who say, I want to achieve this thing so I have more time and freedom to be with my children.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do is to get to the having more time and freedom with my children, I spend less time with my children.
Right.
And it's like, it's never going to get you what you need if the path that you're taking is absolutely going the opposite direction of the thing that you should be headed toward.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not a direct line to the thing you're headed toward, but it can't be going completely in the wrong direction.
Right. Yeah. It's like working a 40-hour week right now is not going to get you to a 20-hour week by the end of the year, usually.
No, not
because that's a big cut, right?
It's a big cut. The only way it's going to happen is if you know exactly what you're doing, then how that is translating to 2 hours less next week, another 2 hours. You'd have to be very, very, very precise about how is this thing right now producing that thing in a very short-term sort of way, not in some sort of, well, when I get promoted, I will, have more freedom to be able to go to more soccer games. It's like, really? Do you know that? And will they still be playing soccer then? I don't know.
Right.
So being in alignment with the goal, with what you think the goal is going to deliver. I think that's another huge one.
Yeah. So what about the leadership cost for those who have teams?
When we're not in alignment, it's way easier to get distracted, is one of the things. The squirrel factor becomes really, really high. The shiny object factor becomes really, really high because we're not actually that focused on the goal, right? And so it becomes way easier to be caught by all sorts of other things. And when we're not really focused on the goal, that means we're probably giving all sorts of mixed messages to our team. When we get there, if we're not enthusiastic, then they're not enthusiastic. This is really a trickle-down theory in practice.
Right.
What the energy is at the top is what gets translated down, to the energy throughout anyone else that you're working with. And so, I'll say the converse example was when, I can't remember the gal's name, was a former owner but founder of Spanx. When she actually sold, that was a thing, and everybody felt it. It was where they were going. They were building this thing to be a really big thing. This was her mission, and it showed that it played out throughout, a lot of aspects of it, because she wasn't just celebrating for herself. She was celebrating with the whole team. The whole team was celebrating with her. That's the thing, is like, when you get to the goal, is the team also going to be excited about it? Because I know, at the point that I get the goal that I'm working on right now with this account, I know you and Sophia and Rachel and anyone else that's working is also going to be really excited about it, because we can see what that impact is. Right. And so it's not just about, we're just going here because that's the random goal that we've set. And so it's also then easier for me to direct the kind of work that I need the team to do, because it's also super focused and aligned, and I can feel when it feels like it's starting to shift.
Right.
Say, well, this doesn't feel like this is in alignment. Let's get back into it, as opposed to letting my team also shiny object and distract, because a lot of us, like I do right now, I work all with subcontractors who are in and of themselves entrepreneurs. So it's really easy for them to do the same thing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and I love that you use the example of like selling a business, because I think that's one that, especially when people are starting out, they don't really think about, right? But it's like, if you have said that the eventual goal is to sell the business, if your team is doing their job correctly, they are going to be building out a system that can run without you, especially once you start bringing on key leaders. But if that's what you're saying, and internally you're like, I don't know if this is sellable, or maybe I'll just close it because I don't really want to hand this off to anybody else, then you're going to fight them at every turn because you don't really want the business to go on without you. And, and what that does is then people are confused, like, why am I getting pulled back or redirected when what I'm trying to do is get this business to a sellable place faster? They get tired of spinning their wheels, and so they start to disengage. And, like one of the things that I've always heard you talk about is that a leader's clarity is what defines the organizational energy. The team can get energized when they feel like the leader is clear and they're all going in the same direction.
Yep.
So that's the issue that it causes as, from a leadership perspective when you're chasing the wrong finish line. So at this point, I think that people should by now be aware they're either chasing the finish line that's theirs or they're not. So if they're going, maybe this isn't what I want to do. Maybe this isn't where I want to be. How do you redraw the line?
It's the easiest and hardest thing in the world. And all it is saying, I'm done with that. I'm going to do something else.
I was like, I love that. It's the easiest and hardest thing in the world. There's your answer, Tonya, right there. Okay, so it's as simple as saying, I'm going to do something else.
I'm going to do something else. And that's easy because really that's all you have to do is say, I'm going to do something else. And it's hard because that for many of us makes us feel like we were a failure.
Mm-hmm.
And often we don't know what the next thing is. And if we don't know what the next thing is, saying, I'm not doing this, but I don't know what the next thing is, makes that even harder.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because now I really feel like a failure. But sometimes it's as simple as just saying, oh, instead of going, 3 degrees to the left, we're going to go 4 degrees to the right. Sometimes it's not that big of a deal, but it's just getting clear on it and saying, nope, we're done with this, for whatever reason. Because one of the things we talk about our quarterly planning process, the QTU, pretty much every time is sometimes we don't know the finish line isn't our finish line till we've started toward it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I want that finish line. And we start, working toward it. And at some point it's like, I now am far enough in to see all the other things that go along with this particular finish line. And I do not want those.
Mm-hmm.
And back to, it's as easy as saying, okay, I don't want those. And it's as hard as saying, so then what?
Right.
So, like I said, it's super easy and super hard all at the same time. But it is about being decisive. And I think for a lot of folks, that is the hard piece because, as I said, it's often, even if it's not externally perceived in any way whatsoever, internally we see it as a failure.
Yeah.
Which it isn't. It's just data. It's just information.
I liked what you said about how, because I've known this in my own life as well, right? Sometimes you don't know you're chasing the wrong line until you've started the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of what we have to do is recognize that the finish line isn't necessarily a point of completion. Sometimes it's just figuring out what's most fulfilling for us.
Right. Back to also super easy and super hard.
Right.
Both
right.
at the same time.
Okay. Unfortunately, I just don't see that this is like, we can't prescribe the
Absolutely.
right finish line to anybody, like to anybody who's listening for sure, because we're not having the two-way conversation. Second, it's really one of those, it's kind of like certain things in life where you'll know it when you see it, you know it when you get to it. But I think where we can leave our listeners, right, is just the comforting thought that not every finish line deserves to be crossed. And sometimes, the bravest thing that you can do as a leader or the most authentic thing that you can do as an entrepreneur is to stop running towards something as soon as you realize it no longer fits who you are, where your business is headed, or where you want to take your business. The finish lines that we inherit, whether it's from mentors, industry norms, or our past goals, they oftentimes look super impressive on paper, but that is what keeps us trapped in living out other people's definitions of success. So, what you have said in the past is, you have to pause long enough to ask, is this finish line or goal still mine? That's where you start to create the space where you can actually see a new goal or a new finish line to move you forward. Not faster, although sometimes it does end up being faster. That's one thing that we've talked about a lot, but with clearer purpose. And, kind of just to bring us full circle, if today's question has stirred something for you, then you really want the questions that Gwen sends out every week, right? She's not going to give you advice. It's not big insights, just one really good question designed to help you think differently about your business. And it is the kind of question that will shift perspective, spark clarity, and help you really start intentionally moving toward a goal that feels in more alignment with everything that you do. You can go to everydayeffectiveness.com/question to sign up. Make it part of your week. The emails come out on Fridays. And who knows, by Monday, you may already experience a shift in how you lead and how you're working. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.